And today we have a Liberal leader who won't accept climate science and operates a basic rabble of climate change deniers. Well, I feel after that I'm pretty dangerous up here as a banker because, goodness me, if they think lawyers are difficult, I'm not sure what you're going to think about bankers. But look, what I wanted to talk to today is what the finance market is looking at and really where we are with this. And to be clear, it is very clear now, everybody understands, certainly in the finance market, that the renewables are cheaper, that renewables will be even cheaper tomorrow, that businesses are already planning for a carbon price, that renewables are going to be going into chemicals, plastics and exports, and there's a significant policy failure that's leaving businesses across this nation exposed to abrupt change, just as we heard out before. So the question I'll be asking later on is, what is going on? So in terms of levelised cost of power, you all know it, it is true, we're all banking on it, renewables are cheaper and they will continue to get cheaper. So in terms of getting cheaper, if the slide works, if we go forward, yep. We're not going forward, you see, that's what happens when you end up with bankers. So in terms of size, what also you're seeing is you think renewables have matured in certain sectors. You may have thought that wind is not getting bigger. It is. So these type of turbines, we had Muscle Row in Australia, 125 metres, Macarthur was 140 metres, Cooper's Gap is 180 metres, and Murra that'll be built in Victoria is now stretching to 220 metres high. So traditional new technologies and traditional renewables are becoming more efficient. In terms of batteries, we'll go to the next slide here, the battery costs are falling, so storage is no longer a problem and it is getting cheaper. In terms of business, around the world already most countries have a carbon price. 15% of global emissions already are involved in carbon schemes. Businesses are not dumb. They know a carbon cost is coming to this country in one way or another, and they're building their businesses around there being a sensible cost of carbon. So we are planning for the future. In terms of progressive, what's going next, this is probably the most important area where we're going to, is we're moving towards a new phase of renewables. Most of you think about renewables as just about electricity. You need to think about renewables as everything. Okay, electricity through a process called electrolysis can turn water into hydrogen and oxygen, and hydrogen is the mother of everything. So yes, renewables will be able to supply fuel for your cars, for the ships, for trains and for trams. Yes, renewables can be exported. Yes, renewables can replace coking coal in steel mills. Yes, renewables can replace plastics, paints, fertilisers and explosives. Yes, Australia is blessed with an unlimited amount of exportable renewables, if only we were blessed with a progressive government that would really understand what opportunities Australia has as a major energy exporter. Unfortunately, I know time's short, so unfortunately for 10 years now we've had everything but a progressive government. For the last 10 years we've been racked by policy failure. Regardless of the scheme of anything that reduces emissions, it's been toppled by the dominance of the coal industry and has been rejected by the far right of the Liberal Party. Howard proposed a baseline and credit system, that went nowhere. Abbott destroyed and tried to destroy the renewable energy target. Abbott did destroy the carbon tax and tried to kill and virtually killed the Climate Change Authority. Malcolm and Josh were forced to dismiss the emissions trading scheme, and the Finkel recommended clean energy target was again rejected by Josh. Today, although recently we had the NEG, the National Energy Guarantee, so you can go around this terrible circle of disasters, and that was killed by Dutton Abbott-led far-right attacking anything that represented a legislated emissions target. And now, finally, you thought you'd got to the end of it and we go for another spin. We have Angus Taylor and a caretaker Prime Minister talking about forced acquisitions of power stations, even using money, your money, to build coal white elephants. So the Climate Change Authority, which was around, made it very clear. They did a very sensible report, if this is going to work, which shows you, before they were gutted, as to where we would be in the future. We had an independent authority that took the politics out of determining emissions and power. What they looked at is they said, what would happen if we were to meet our carbon budget? Where would the coal sector, our energy, be coming from in 2030 and in 2050? And as you can see, back then they were forecasting 50% renewables by 2030 and 70% renewables by 2050 and coal fully gone. Well, that analysis still is very relevant today. The government obviously didn't like that, so what they did is they came up with a policy to climate failure. They back-ended Australia's emissions. So what they have is they have a dot. They assume Australia follows that top line, that we do nothing until 2030, because that's what we are planning to do, and then miraculously, under the government's forecasts, we will decarbonise the whole Australian economy in 5 years. No business leader could possibly face or live in a business environment suggesting that that is a logical investment profile. Where we are at the moment is we're off track, so the government says we're going to meet our emissions target at a gallop. The current policies in place for the government will get to 11% by 2030. They will not get to the 26%, and they will not get to the 55% we would need to if we would make our fair share, globally fair share contribution to meeting a 2-degree target. What I ask you is what's happened. This is where we were 60 years, and in Hawthorn, where 50% of the people vote Liberal, we used to have a government that was concerned with the environment. That was 10 years ago. 60 years of achievement destroyed by 10 years of policy failure. Just remember, it was the Liberals that created the opposite of environment. Yes, it was the Liberals who appointed the first Environment Minister. And today we have a Liberal leader who won't accept climate science and operates a basic rabble of climate change deniers. In terms of where we are at the moment, you can know the story. This is the celebration for the subsidy of the coal industry by allowing it to pollute freely with the removal of the carbon tax. And then recently we've seen Scott Morrison's dismissal of the very important IPCC report, which categorically states that we will lose the Great Barrier Reef, all of its ecosystems and all of its animals if we do nothing. We face a Liberal Party that is a very different Liberal Party to the one my father represented or the one I joined as a young Liberal. This isn't the Liberal Party at the moment because it doesn't care. It doesn't seem to care for you as representatives, it doesn't seem to care for our children, and it doesn't seem to care for our environment. This is a very simple economic debate that, yes, I'm a banker, but also we're all citizens here. This is straight, clear science and it should be addressed. Thank you.